Hello again, and thanks for staying with us. Now, today marks the second anniversary of the start of the civil unrest that rocked parts of Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal in July 2021. The looting and violence left a trail of destruction and claimed several lives, with the community of Phoenix still reeling after a number of people were killed there in clashes between residents. 2 years down the line, the grieving families are still seeking answers for exactly what happened. We're joined now by Mxolisi Myeni. He's the spokesperson for two of the families that's been affected and joins us via our video link this morning. It's great to have you on the program, sir. Thanks very much indeed for making time. You know, it's a painful anniversary because of the very difficult memories that I'm sure it brings up for the families that you speak on behalf of today. In what ways are they marking this moment, if at all?
No, it's actually a sad state for the family. A sad state indeed, given that the justice that they've been requiring and waiting for, it seems that is evading them by day.
Yeah. Take us through where that process is, if you can, Mxolisi.
No, basically, we know that some of the court processes have started, and what we've been experiencing is that the accused majority of times are acquitted, and there's instances where cases are lowered to common assault. So it's quite an injury to the suffering families.
Yeah, and I imagine even trying to keep up with the different steps of the process is becoming even more difficult given just how much time has passed.
Yeah, especially also with respect to the Human Rights Commission report and the CRL report, of which I think if it was already released, it was going to give us some guidance and aspect as to how families, at least, they can be compensated. Right.
Is there any kind of agreement, do you reckon, now around what happened? Because I remember at the time of the height of the violence, there were still, several versions of events, some of them conflicting series of events, even though by and large it feels like this was a conflict that was demarcated along racial lines.
No, we are aware that, it's known that the unrest took place in the main in two provinces. But when it comes to Phoenix, it took racial tones. And we know that, and it's established that there's been racial profiling, especially of Africans.
Yeah, and you reckon that's now pretty widely accepted?
I suppose so. I suppose so. Because from the side of the victims as well, that's how they perceive it to be, that attacks on them, they were racially motivated, especially that they took place on public roads. Yeah. So victims knew what has taken place definitely as a massacre.
Sure. Several political parties descended on Phoenix in the wake of what took place. I wonder whether you reckon their intervention improved the situation or possibly made it worse.
No, actually the intervention by the minister then at the prime of the unrest, it did stabilize, especially the work that we did with my committee and my colleagues. It did stabilize the situation because if you remember, there was still panic of fears of revenge. So it did stabilize, and then we were to assist families to open cases. If you remember, families could not access Phoenix because they were afraid. So we assisted them to open cases and assisted them to view the bodies of loved ones in mortuaries, and also with data capturing.
Sure. How would you describe Phoenix today? In many instances, because of just the extent of the pain that's been felt by so many people in one community, events like this sometimes shift the tectonic plate, so to speak, in a community.
No, they won't speak. I don't want to lie to you. And families have not had an opportunity to heal, as they're still struggling with justice. As much as families, they believe in peace, but there is a sentiment that it mustn't be at the expense of justice. And families as well didn't have the opportunity to do cultural rituals to come and repatriate the spirit of loved ones. So that has been another matter that has been outstanding.
Do you know of families who are still looking for loved ones?
Possibly.
Sure. Speak to us a bit more about the families that you do represent now. I mean, do you know what happened, or at least have they been able to figure out how they lost their loved ones?
The challenge that has been happening, especially when it comes to cases, is a lack of evidence. This is what we are seeing, and lack of witnesses. Because majority of people who were attacked were on public roads, and they are not that familiar with Phoenix. Some of them maybe were passing through, and only to find out they are unable to locate exactly where or even identify those people that attacked them.
Yeah. There is a court process, of course, that the families are hoping will be concluded justly and promptly. But I wonder what you reckon also needs to be done outside of that for there to be at least meaningful cohabitation in Phoenix, in a context where, again, people are walking around with very deep scars because of what happened 2 years ago.
Yeah, aside of justice that it's required, but also it's a call for civil society to come aboard and work hand in hand with affected parties. And remember also that conditions that led to the unrest, they haven't changed much. We see people are still unemployed, and inequality is rife as well. So I think that is another thing that it's a triggering issue for the country.
Yeah, I mean, the officials, authorities in government made all kinds of promises in the wake of what took place. I wonder if any of those have materialized, at least from your vantage point.
Not most of them, although there has been cases of programs that were undertaken in different communities. But those programs, they only happen ad hoc, once a day or two, and then everything rests. And remember that as a country, we have a problem of breaking news story. Once something is out there, we discuss it as time goes by, and then we forget it. But families are still hurting. For them, it's still on 2020 July unrest. They have not moved on because there are many of them who lost their jobs. Many of them have incurred injuries. Some have lost their cars, some have lost fathers. Children are without parents. Some even had to move from around here to go to live in other areas since they were no longer unable to sustain themselves here.
Yeah, it's a difficult question, this, but have the families been able to wrap their heads around what meaningful compensation looks like in a context like this? I mean, there is no amount that you could put to the loss of life or to trauma. But do they know what, compensation that would at least help them move forward may look like?
Not really, but the main thing, the family from the beginning, their call was for an apology. As much as justice is needed and compensation is needed. But they wanted that those who attacked them to recognize how they've hurt them and their families. So that if possibly dialogues can begin of social cohesion, but we also need economic cohesion because it's different livelihoods. This side people, they seem to be more getting well with lives, and surrounding communities are really battling, and nothing much has changed.
Yeah, I think that is really the most sobering reality as we mark this 2-year anniversary. Mxolisi Myeni, thanks for speaking to us. Appreciate you making time for Newsfeed AM this Saturday. Mxolisi speaks for at least 2 of the many families who are affected by what is now commonly reported as the Phoenix massacre during the July unrest in July 2021. 36 people being killed during what is actually described in some instances as a racially charged attack during that difficult time. Once again, Mxolisi Myeni, thanks for your contribution.